Welcome to Episode 4 of the Security Professionals Podcast, Fugitive Recovery with Dan Magnus, Part 2. Welcome to the Security Professionals Podcast, brought to you by Security Training Center, LLC. This is your weekly source of news, tips, and education for the security specialist. I'm your host, Alex Haddox, and this is Episode 4, Fugitive Recovery with Dan Magnus. This is the second part of our interview with Dan Magnus. One thing I forgot to mention last week is that I found some videos of Dan's fights on YouTube. So I went ahead and added them to our YouTube channel for those who want to check them out. And here's part 2 of the interview. Are you looking to run your own security guard training school? Check out guardcardtraining.com. We have state-approved security guard training materials, professionally printed and bound student manuals, PowerPoint presentations, knowledge checks, and final exams. Everything you need to run your own program. Just open the box and start teaching. guardcardtraining.com. So how important was that then? If the people just gave themselves up and you knew where they were, how did the interpersonal communications work? Why was it valuable?
Because they have to still listen to you, and you never know if they're going to try to go away or try to get away. They try to bribe you. They try to do this, and you have to have the negotiation skills. You have to talk to their families. You got to talk to other people. People don't talk to people anymore. So it's like you're trying to talk to something and it's too busy. It'd be easier to tell what you got to text the person, put your hands behind your back. They got to know that you're serious. And I see a lot of police officers right now that can't talk their way out of something or talk their way out of the danger, and they actually make it worse.
So you're referring to command presence?
Yes, command, dealing with people that you're the authority. So it just makes it, I just see negotiations are a lot less now because of technology. Before you had to, basically be able to talk. You go into a bar and the guy's at the bar and you're picking him up and you got to get out of the bar. You better have some negotiation skills. What are you going to do? Text everybody, look, this is a police matter, stay out of the way?
Yeah, in Spanish too. Yeah,
it doesn't work. It doesn't work like that. I've seen the LAPD come into places now, and they talk worse than the persons that are they're dealing with. They get angrier, easier. You got to have tons of patience to be in this job, and their patience level is gone because they don't have the negotiation skills. Negotiation. I feel it doesn't matter how well you can defend yourself or how well you can take someone down. It's how it's how your presence and your body language and your voice that really does the best things of communist. The guy knows he's in a no-win situation, and it's easy to say to him, look, do what I say or the consequences are going to be really bad. Now you got to be so politically correct. You're more politically correct nowadays than we ever were before. You got to be careful what you say because it might be recorded. You got to be careful what you do because you might be taped. So it's just there's a lot of restrictions, and the one thing is criminals use that to their advantage.
In what way?
They can. I tell people now, if you get attacked out in the street, I tell bouncers all the time, make sure the guy doesn't do a header, and chances are this thing's going to be taped. So, create your witnesses. Make sure that you know what you're doing when you take the guy down. Don't let him smack his head because people still have that thing. Well, you're a bouncer. You should have known what to do. Well, you're a human being. You get just as scared, So basically, and people don't realize that bouncers and, even bounty hunters and even the police or the federal agents, they're not as well trained as people think. What made me good was that I had a martial arts school. So I would practice handcuffing all the time. I could get a guy in a pair of cuffs real quick because I practiced all the time. Most people don't do that. I would do real life scenarios in my martial arts school for my own training as well as that. And that's why I had a lot of, the federal agents come to my schools in DC because I made real life scenarios. You've been to martial arts schools and all that. Half the time when they teach self-defense, have you ever seen anybody get attacked like they do in karate schools?
No, I haven't.
I mean, no, I'm not knocking karate schools, but basically any martial arts schools, the way they throw a punch, that's not the way they do it out in the street. I'm like, you got to make it as realistic as you can.
Yeah, absolutely. And,
the police, and I'm saying federal, state, local, whatever, they're not trained. They have a little bit of training and, unless they have 15, 20 years of street, smarts, they don't do really well.
Yeah, I interviewed for my other show, The Practical Defense, a former police officer, and he was saying that a lot of the law enforcement guys who did not have a martial arts background were really hesitant and afraid to get into hand-to-hand situations because they just did not have the experience.
Yeah, well, they don't make enough of a, financial thing for them to pay for formal training. So it usually has to come out of their own pockets, and they don't get paid that much to, go there. And they think, half these officers have never been in a fight in their life. And we're like animals. It's fight and flight. We just don't have instincts. So believe me, if I get into confrontation, I get just as scared as anybody else. I tell people, I'm a coward. I just train myself to get him down as fast as I can, and get him in a position where he can't hurt me. I protect myself so I can protect others.
Go into that in a little bit more detail, please.
Well, if I can't protect myself, let's say someone starts a fight in a bar. If I can't protect myself, how am I going to stop this guy from hurting somebody else? I've got to learn. I got to know I can protect myself so I can protect others. I got to know that my skill level is strong enough to take that person down so he can't cause harm to me or anybody else, because I'm putting my life on the line. When police officers put their lives on the line technically to protect the public, but if they're not suitably trained, they're going to be scared because they don't know if they can do it or not. They don't do enough real case scenarios to do that. You come up to a guy, what happens if he's on drugs? What happens if he's got 4 or 5 other guys waiting in the wings? Just because you have a badge and a gun and cuffs doesn't mean you're going to be able to take them down. And, like you said with the baton, okay, if the thing causes where you have to go to the baton, are the police that are using the batons even know how to use the batons? They had a thing when the martial arts movies got real big and Bruce Lee made nunchucks really big. They were actually law enforcement thought of, had some police forces carrying nunchucks.
Really?
Yeah.
Holy cow.
Yeah. New York did it for a while.
You're kidding me.
Instead of a baton, they went to nunchucks, but no one taught them, you don't spin them.
Oh my goodness.
Used for control. Then they went to, then they started making the batons. I still see them now. They look like tafas.
Yeah. Those are still, yeah.
Don't know how to use them. Tafas were used basically to block a sword so it wouldn't cut your arm off. It would cut into the wood.
Yeah. Enough
so they could hit them with the other one. But they look cool. And even the police thing aren't that well trained. So somebody came up with, well, if we arm them with nunchucks, the crowd knows what it's like, or the public knows what it's like. They're not going to mess with the police officer. Yeah, but if the police officer isn't trained with the nunchaku, which is what it's really called, not nunchucks.
Yeah. They hit himself in the head. I mean, I've practiced with them, and if you hit a heavy bag with them and you're not careful, it'll bounce back and hit you and clock you in the head.
You go to a karate tournament, and you see, weapons forms. The guy's spinning double nunchucks like as fast as he can. I like to say, all I have to do is take a stick and throw it at him while he's spinning it. It's going to stop that spin right there, and those chucks are going to go all over the place. They don't practice. Just because you can spin them doesn't mean you can hit with them. And they were basically used where the 2 sticks with a rope, you could use it as a control thing. It was an utter failure, so they stopped doing it. There's no police force that uses them anymore. They found out this is just a waste of time. They got hit with their own, what you can say, bullshit. Oh, wow, nunchucks are really good. They found out it was like the worst weapon you can use. And now the same thing with the baton. It looks like a tafa, but they don't use it that way. It's just a different way to hold the stick. They never even train people on nightsticks. Now they have the collapsible batons. The weapon's only as good as the person using it.
Yep, absolutely.
And one thing about criminals, they do practice with their weapons much more than the police do.
Yeah, that is very true and very scary.
Well, that's the thing.
Even practicing with pepper spray.
Yeah, because criminals don't really care. They're doing it for their own greed, where the police are doing it to protect the citizen. So if they're not trained to protect themselves, how are they going to protect somebody else? It's like if you're a bodyguard. If you don't know how to protect yourself, how are you going to protect a person? Yeah, you have to have the skills to protect yourself, so you can use the advantage of, I know how to protect myself so well that I can protect someone else. I can put somebody down so they can't hurt somebody else. Remember, you're putting yourself, like if I'm protecting you and someone comes after you and I get in the way of him, I got to stop him from hurting me, or because if he hurts me, he's going to get to you anyway. And people don't understand that. A good police officer, federal agent, anybody, bodyguard, they got to know how to protect themselves real well. They can protect themselves real well, then they can protect the public. And they're not that trained. The public wants to believe that every cop is like a Chuck Norris, Texas Ranger, Walker. If we had any guys that were that good in the police thing, there'd be no crime. And that's the illusion everybody has because of movies.
Stunned silence.
Wow.
I'm just like, wow. Okay, where do we go from here? Holy cow. It's, Well,
the biggest thing that you get out of it is that, we are controlled by, movies and TV. And because the regular part, that's why I teach seminars now on, and I don't call it self-defense, I call it personal protection, because the way people learn how to protect themselves, and even the way the police do, is from what we watch. I mean, watch Law and Order. Do you really think that the detectives get there that fast? First responders are the uniforms. The detectives sometimes don't get to a case for like 2 weeks. They don't call the police the detectives right in. There's not enough detectives. And, when you watch these shows, they solve it, right away. What about the 900 other cases they have? There's just so many to go around. But, we want to have that belief that we're safe. The only belief is you're not safe. You have to make yourself safe. That's why, I always thought I was stopping crime, by doing what I was doing, but I wasn't. I was catching criminals. It's up to normal people, ordinary people like you, like your loved ones, to stop crime by being more aware, and making it harder for people to commit crime. People just think, oh, well, the police are there. They help stop crime. No, they don't stop crime. They deter crime. But there's not enough of them. It's just like the Air Marshal Service. There's no such thing anymore. When they started the Air Marshal Service, it was to stop the panic of the public that, okay, we're going to put an air marshal on every plane. Well, they found that was too costly. Then it was an air marshal per every 100 planes. Then they found out we don't need you air marshals on the planes because everybody on the plane's an air marshal. Because if anybody gets up right now and says that they're going to do anything on a plane, you're going to have 150 to 100 people, depending on how big the plane is, go after the guy. Because before 9/11, if I was on a plane before 9/11 and someone went to hijack the plane, even if they killed somebody, don't do anything. They're just taking us somewhere else. And when they put the planes into the buildings, It changed the whole game. There is no more hijacking a plane. If someone hijacks a plane, everybody now thinks, okay, we're going to die. So now, why do you need one U.S. an air marshal? You know what his real job was to do, but they couldn't tell the public?
What?
He was technically, the draw was that he'd be in first class, and if something happened, he would draw his weapon, go to the cockpit, and make sure nobody got in the cockpit. They could kill everybody on the airplane, but the plane couldn't be used as a weapon.
Really?
So he would shoot, but they said, no, you can't say that because the public won't take it. But that's what they did. And then they started putting the air marshals in coach.
Because it was cheaper, right?
Right, yeah.
So they have to fight their way through a bunch of people.
Right, panicked people. And the air marshals weren't trained. And no, air marshals don't carry guns. They would carry stun guns. But what happens, the air marshal is supposed to be on the plane so the plane can't get hijacked. So they can't make the pilots or even, take the pilots out so the plane crashes. An air marshal is supposed to have, we're all expendable. We bought a seat, but that doesn't mean I'm there to save you if I'm an air marshal. I'm there to save the plane. So you can kill everybody on the plane. It doesn't matter. I'm not going to let you in that cockpit. Try telling that to the U.S. public, that the air marshals aren't there for their protection. So it didn't hit. And now there are really no air marshals anymore. Because, you might have one or two, but they're usually in coach sitting in the back, and you can tell them they're the most miserable ones on the plane. Because they're sitting in the middle seat, and there's nothing they can do. But, people want that feeling of, safety. Well, the only way you're going to get that feeling of safety is train yourself to protect yourself. You train to protect yourself, don't you? And your loved ones, right?
Hell yeah.
And you train other people to do the same thing. But aren't you really training people to protect themselves? Because if they can't protect themselves, how are they going to protect anybody else?
Exactly. If
you're bodyguarding somebody and you don't know how to protect yourself, how are you going to protect them?
Yeah, because the other person's just next on the menu.
Fugitives know that. They know, okay, if I'm going to mess with, before there was a fear because, okay, what are these guys going to do to me if I don't, go with them? Now, with technology, the fugitive himself will probably take a thing and probably get off because of brutality because you put the cuffs on him too hard. He's filming, or he's having his friend film what we're doing. And is it illegal? Or is it that? Am I breaking their, no, we're not. I don't have to read you your rights because I'm not arresting you for the crime that you're committing. I'm arresting you because you're wanted because you didn't show up even for court. And in a federal jurisdiction, you don't show up, then the feds go after you. But they're not going after you for the crime you did. They're going after you because you didn't show up.
Interesting. So you don't have to read Miranda rights when you...
No, because they're guilty. If you're arrested and then you did a federal crime and you flee, you're wanted for not showing up. And then they send guys like me after you. And that's what I'm arresting you for. I'm not arresting you for what you did. I get them all the time saying to me, I didn't do it. I don't care. It doesn't matter.
Doesn't Tommy Lee Jones say that at one point? He says, I don't care.
I don't know what you did. I don't really even care what you did. It's not my thing. I'm arresting you for fleeing. You didn't show up. That's the whole thing. That's right. And when Tommy Lee Jones said that, there was a lot of controversy for that movie, but that was the real truthful thing. Because I don't have to read you your Miranda thing because you are guilty. You didn't show up. You're being picked up for that. Now, that charge isn't big enough to put you in jail. Now they have you, and now they're going to go for the charges of whatever you did. Whether it's robbery, burglary, murder, whatever. But that's not what they go after. They're going after you because you didn't show up or you fled, and they put a Okay, he didn't show up, but there's a warrant out for him. It's the same thing if you do, when you give restraining orders. Anybody can give a restraining order out. You don't have to be certified or a private investigator to give anybody can give a restraining order to somebody. There's just rules. If let's say I have to give you a restraining order against, let's say someone put the restraining order against you and I serve you with the restraining order. I knock on your door. You open the door. I go, "Are you Alex Haddox?" And you go, "Yes." I go, "This is for you." And you don't accept it. I can throw it on the ground and walk away. Then just go to the police station and say at 1:35 p.m. I served Alex Haddox with a restraining order, which he did not accept. I threw it down on the floor. And then when he breaks that restraining order, I got to go to court saying, "Hey, I sent it to him. I gave it to him, and I'm not I'm not doing perjury." So, basically he's screwed.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, because I know a lot of times some of the guard companies, especially the smaller ones, will actually use their guards to serve different warrants and subpoenas and things.
Right.
It's kind of a side business.
Yeah, and you don't have to. I mean, he doesn't have to accept it. You can throw it on the ground as long as you served it and you're willing, to tell the truth in court. I mean, it's just a pain in the ass, but that's how it's so easy to catch sometimes guys that break restraining orders. If you have the right investigator, that's a whole different subject. I have such a way to be able to, if anybody's really bothering somebody, to have them break the restraining order. Because, that's part of the negotiation thing. If you know how to, negotiate and get people, you can get people almost to do anything. Say a restraining order is a piece of paper, but if it's done correctly, it can be effective. But most people just think, "Oh, I'm going to get a restraining order. It's just a piece of paper." It's how you handle it that makes it work. See, the world has to learn that crime isn't taken care of by what you see in the movies. It's all on awareness. The more aware people are, the less prey they're going to be. And the criminals have to work harder. Unfortunately, the criminals are always going to work harder because they're in it for the money too. Everything comes from the money and power. And, now everything also with today now is anybody who's a fugitive may be under thing because of our way everybody's under the same law is he could be a terrorist. That's the new thing now. Do they mark him as a terrorist because he's wanted by the government? Osama bin Laden was the FBI's most wanted list. He was the number one most wanted person before he was killed, which is kind of ridiculous because he never really committed a crime in the United States. How did he become the FBI's number one guy?
Well, wasn't it the multiple bombings that he orchestrated? Wasn't it did they use RICO against him? Conspiracy and things like that?
They did whatever they could just so they could get him on that to make the people happy. And for 10 years, he was America's number one fugitive.
Yeah, because he tried going after the World Trade Center. He did the World Trade Center twice. And there was also the attack against the coal in Yemen. And then there were the bombings in Africa. So, yeah, he was doing a lot of stuff orchestrating. He didn't personally participate, but he funded it and orchestrated a lot of it.
Right. So, but if you know anything, FBI is national. FBI isn't international. FBI basically just works in the United States. You're not really supposed to work outside the United States. But after 9/11 hit, they made exceptions to keep the American public happy.
Oh, okay.
See, people don't know the laws. Each agency has a certain thing, and now they're all mixed. The big thing you want to know the difference, Alex, now is all the agencies are intermixed now.
Well, isn't that a good thing? Because I thought because the whole thing was talking about, like, if the agencies had worked better together and exchanged information, they could have prevented 9/11.
Right. But here's the thing. Human nature. It's ego. My agency is better than your agency. My agency wants to get the credit for this. ATF has to always deal with DEA. FBI always has to deal with, a DEA agent. And now the biggest thing now is INS. Now they're broken up into two things now. Now there's INS and ICE, Immigration Custom Enforcement. And I've seen them here in Los Angeles. Being one of the ICE agents was a friend of mine. He was the head of the West Coast office. They did a raid in an apartment for some guy that was selling bath salts, because now they made them illegal because they're a hallucinatory drug, and they were basically coming out of China. So they had SWAT there, and the lead guy that was in charge was an ICE agent. And I'm like, is the guy, immigration?
Oh, it was customs, right?
Right. ICE is Immigration Custom Enforcement. I don't even know what they were doing, why he was the lead agent for the drug bust. That's how, they're all working together, but they're all over the place. New York City now used to be, the police force in New York City when I was there was housing, there was transit, and then there was public. Public was the uniforms that walked the beats, the uniforms that rode the cars. Then there was a separate police thing that did the housing, the projects. And then there was a third police thing that did just the transit. And they stayed out of each other's way. Transit dealt with transit crime. Housing dealt with housing crime. And then there was the general public thing. Now they're all together now, and everybody steps on everybody's tongue. So they think, if we mix them all together, it's going to be easier. But everybody wants to take the credit. Instead of just getting the job done, somebody's got to get the credit. And that's because it's really run by politicians.
Wow. You are just sunshine and light, aren't you?
Yeah, well, that's the whole thing. You just said the major thing. Everybody wants sunshine and light. But that's not the real world. The real world isn't like that.
Yeah.
And if I can teach people to know there's a darker world out there, something hopefully they'll never go. But if they're more aware of it, it's going to make the life. I mean, is it going to stop crime totally? No, it'll never stop crime. Unless, there was a movie that just came out where it was called The Purge. Have you ever heard of it?
Yeah, I saw the previews for it.
The concept was that once a year for 12 hours, there was no police, nothing. You could do whatever you want. You could kill somebody, you could rob, you could do whatever you want for 12 hours. You could do all the purging you wanted for 12 hours. And crime went down because it was real strict after that. And unemployment was at 1%. And they said it was all because they let people go nuts every once in a while, once a year for 12 hours. And you know what? That sounds like a ridiculous concept, but who knows? It maybe keeps people more sane.
Well, that will do it for this episode of the Security Professionals Podcast. If you have any tips you'd like to share with everyone, a comment on a show, or if you would like to suggest a topic for an upcoming episode, write into podcast@security-training-center.com. Or you can leave us a voicemail at 909-742-0649. I'd love to hear from you. Until next time, stay aware, stay safe.
I'm a doctor.
I'm a teacher.
I live in the South.
California is my home.
I speak fluent Spanish.
No hablo español.
I have brown eyes.
My eyes are blue.
We're very different people, but we do have something in common. I made a donation to the Red Cross.
When disaster struck and I needed help, her gift to the American Red Cross changed my life.
When you support the American Red Cross, you change a life, starting with your own.
Call 1-800-RED-CROSS or visit redcross.org and find out about life-changing opportunities in your area.
The Security Professionals Podcast is copyright Security Training Center, LLC. This work is licensed under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives 4.0 International License. An archive of previous episodes can be found at security-training-center.com/podcast.